The American Secretary of State Marco Rubio said there'd been tremendous progress so far, but there now seem to be two competing plans being discussed. The 28-point plan that came from Russia and America, the others written in response by European countries. Ben Hodges is a former commanding general of the US Army in Europe and joins us now. Ben, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Are you worried? Are you worried about the direction of travel in all of this?
Well, I was very worried yesterday, as of yesterday. This morning, it appears that Secretary Rubio has managed to slow down this runaway train so that Thursday is not this hard and fast deadline. He seems to have also managed to get a little bit of discipline into the process. I mean, this has not been America's finest diplomatic hour, with all kinds of different people, unsanctioned or unofficial, being involved. That's why there's so much confusion about what the actual plan is. It seems that they had a good U.S.-Ukraine session yesterday. Europeans are going to get stuck into it today. So I feel a little better than I did yesterday, but I don't like the direction of travel overall.
And the fear is, and it seems to be borne out by some evidence, that this is effectively Russian demands being adopted by the Americans and put to the Ukrainians. That feels like how this has been created thus far.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, I've seen multiple reports, as I'm sure you and your listeners have, that when people put this in Chat GPT or Google Translate, it was clear that this was a Russian document translated into English. And unfortunately, it's so plausible that that was what happened because the Trump administration generally, the president himself, the vice president, Mr. Witkoff, seemed to be completely happy with the Russian perspective on all of this. The Trump administration has never appreciated or cared about the origin of this conflict, the geography, the history. And so that's plausible. That's why I'm saying at least it looks like a little bit that Secretary Rubio managed to get some discipline back into it. And frankly, the Europeans, were bypassed because they were not present over the months. Now it looks like they are getting serious about it.
Are you worried that Russia in the end is going to be rewarded for its aggression? Is this how it ends? Russia back in the G8, Russia with some territory in the Donbass, not all of it, but some of it. Russia stopping NATO expansion. Russia pushing Ukraine back from its move towards the West. All of those things were Russian war aims. And are you concerned that they're going to be rewarded for that war?
I think that would be the worst possible outcome. But if it's left up to just the Trump administration, that's very close to what will happen. This is why it's so important that Europe, and when I say Europe, of course, I'm not talking just to you. I'm talking about UK, Norway, and also Canada, using their collective heft to be able to push back on this.
But can they do that, though, Ben? I mean, you know how the world works, because the big gorilla in this argument is Donald Trump.
Well, you know what? I have to tell you, I'm a little sick and tired of listening to Europeans whinge about, the Americans this and the Americans that. I mean, the collective economies, wealth, industry, technology, and populations of Europe dwarfs Russia. And, you should have never rolled over for Trump on the tariffs. And now, you just keep rolling downhill. So at some point, Europeans are going to have to either stop whining about it, because you're going to live with the consequences of this terrible deal. Security, millions more Ukrainian refugees. There are no good outcomes for Europe if it goes through as is.
So basically, we've got to stop crooking the knee to Donald Trump and say, if you don't want a good peace, get out. We'll support Ukraine and try and negotiate a peace from a position of strength.
That's exactly. Although when you say it, it sounds better than when I say it.
I don't think that's true, Ben. Should Ukraine ever give up the right to join NATO in the future? Because that seems to be.
Of course not. No. Why should Russia or the U.S. or anybody be allowed to dictate who applies to or who has the right to apply for membership in the alliance? And why is it that almost every country that was ever either a Russian oblast or a republic or part of the Warsaw Pact, why did they scramble to join NATO as fast as they possibly could? Because they know exactly what happens if you're not inside the alliance.
Just finally, does Russia represent a present threat to the West, do you think, still? Russia in its current form?
Of course. They are at war with us right now, even though we wish it were not so. We don't want to say this, but these gray zone operations, the drones, the sabotage, all the different things that they're doing, these are acts of war, if not kinetic. That doesn't mean our response has to be kinetic, but if we don't do something to inflict consequences on the Kremlin for all that they're doing, it only gets worse.
And stop whining if you're a European leader, is what you're saying, Ben.
That's right.
Really interesting stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, thank you.
That's Ben Hodges, there, former commanding general of the US Army in Europe, putting forward a bit of American horse sense, I believe the phrase might be.
He's got a point.
Yeah. And let's talk about Ukraine, Andrew. I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on this, because on the face of it, certainly to an outside non-expert observer like me, there looks like a stitch-up is in play here. That the Russians have repeated what they've said all along. This is what we want out of our war in Ukraine. Trump does not regard Russia as morally culpable, so doesn't feel there needs to be any compensation, any weighing of the scales in terms of who gets what. And it looks like whatever Rubio's saying now, the starting position is going to be one that benefits Russia more than it benefits Ukraine. Is that inevitable now, do you think, Andrew?
I don't think it's inevitable, but it's the trajectory we're currently on, unless the Europeans get their act together and stop it, or take over and take the driving seat themselves without America, if that's what it takes. We need to stop talking about this as a peace deal. It's a capitulation made in the Kremlin. It's as simple as that. It's a surrender made in the Kremlin. We now know, and there's no doubt about this, these 28 points were drawn up by the Russians. We know that from putting AI over the translation. Not all of which it got right, because AI doesn't get everything right these days. And that's what Trump's endorsed. Trump has no interest in the just peace deal in the Ukraine at all. He just wants out. And I think, and of course, yes, Marco Rubio, he's not quite as MAGA as Trump or J.D. Vance. He's trying to hold the line. But frankly, he's the weakest of the three in that administration. And I think you have to see this through the lens of what's happening in domestic politics. It used to be that MAGA was whatever Donald Trump said it was and stood for whatever Donald Trump said it stood for. That's no longer the case. MAGA has become a fractious alliance, now knocking lumps out of each other in a way that the far left usually knocks lumps out of each other. MAGA's doing the same. And MAGA does not like foreign involvements. You know, you've seen this resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And that was over ostensibly the Epstein files that she wanted published. But that wasn't the real reason. That wasn't the fundamental reason. In her statement, she said, all this government seems to do, referring to the Trump administration, is we give money to foreign countries. And we support foreign countries. That's the MAGA mood. That's why he wants out of Ukraine. That's why we're in a precarious situation. And by the way, if any semblance of this deal happens, Ukraine's over, because it gives the Donbass to Russia, something it has not been able to capture in 4 years in its entirety. And it limits Ukraine to a much reduced army. And Putin will just bide his time, rebuild his war machine, and at some time in the next 4, 5, 6 years, he will move to take the rest of Ukraine. Europe, which a while back was showing signs of strength, has recently gone back to its usual useless default position, and it needs to step up to the crease and take control of this.
Meanwhile, of course, if it does happen, as you say, Russia gets in the G8, it gets rewarded for its aggression.
Well, that's absurd. The G7 is an alliance, a group of the world's 7 biggest market economies. I'll let you into something that's not exactly a state secret. Russia is not a market economy. It's not a democracy. So why on earth? I mean, if Europe allows Trump to bring Russia back into the G8, which will be the precursor of having Trump Towers built on the Black Sea and Crimea and all the rest of it, then it's finished. There is no way that Russia, as controlled by the people who currently run the Kremlin, should be allowed anywhere near the G7. It's a dictatorship, it's a warmonger, and it's not a market economy. all of the above disqualifies it from the most powerful economic club in the world.
But Trump thinks it's powerful. Trump thinks Putin's powerful.
Sure.
Trump thinks.
Look, Trump has won.
Yeah.
Are the Europeans just going to roll over?
Well, they have done for the last year, Andrew.
That's my point.
Yeah.
But, there comes a time when, they rolled over throughout the 1930s till some of us finally got our act together.
Yeah, no, we'll see what happens. It's a really precarious. I think precarious is exactly the word to see what happens over the next week. And we'll see. I'm not sure you can trust anything that comes out of what Rubio says about it either. So we'll have to see when the actual terms are released and what Zelensky says. We'll see how good or bad it is.